Hi everyone, it's April again, and welcome back to my channel. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button below and give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and leave me any comments or questions that you have, and I'll be happy to respond to all of them. Today I have a recipe for you. This recipe has great anti-inflammatory properties, so it's really good for inflammatory bowel disease and any other inflammatory response your body may have, like eczema or arthritis. That can kind of help relieve some of the inflammation and pain. And so let's just dive right in. First thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 375 degrees. And I've got my oven already preheating. Then I add 2 tablespoons of coconut oil into my bowl, and I try to leave it out and let it soften kind of to room temperature, because you add cold things to it and the coconut oil will clump, and then it doesn't distribute evenly in your batter. And then I just whisk it around, and then I kind of flop it out of my whisk into different parts of the bowl and move it around. Get it as soft as I can. Alright, and then I do know that baking is all about chemistry, so please don't give me any hating comments in the comment section for doing this the wrong way around, because I've just played with the recipe until it comes out the way I wanted it to. So bear with me. This is a very forgiving recipe, so even if you are not a baker, you don't need to worry about it, because this is so forgiving. You can just flop it all in a bowl and pour it in your pan and pop it in the oven, and it's going to bake and be perfect. So the next thing I add is 1/3 of a cup of maple syrup. Now, you can use honey if you prefer the flavor of honey. I don't like honey, so I sweeten mine with maple syrup. And either one works great. There's nothing for you to worry about with that. And you just whisk in your coconut oil that you've softened with your whisk and bringing it to room temperature. And what you want is just to break the coconut oil up into little bits. If you melt it, it's just going to clump back up, because you're adding, there's my oven preheated. It's just going to clump back up because you're adding cold stuff to it. So I try to break it up. Let's see if you can see this a little bit. Break it into pieces, and then it kind of evenly distributes through the batter and makes it better. The next thing I add is 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Just dump that right in there. And I'm going to toss things in the sink as I go, which is right behind my camera. Okay. And I always stir after every ingredient. It's just a habit from being a baker for so many years. I've always loved baking. So just give that a little stir with the whisk. And the next thing I add is this little group of powdered stuff. I've got 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of salt. And again, I know that's not the right way to do it when you're baking, but it actually works in this recipe pretty well. And I just stir that in until it all looks nice and incorporated. And the cinnamon will actually help with the coconut oil too, because cinnamon is oil soluble. So it hits that oil and it's just delightful. So get it kind of mixed up. It doesn't have to look beautiful and smooth and all that hoo-ha. See how lumpy that is? It's perfectly fine. Almost like a brownie batter. You know, it can be lumpy and all that. So the next thing I add is 1 large egg. And that and baking powder are really the only rising ingredients you have in this recipe. And it doesn't rise much at all. It gets nice and fluffy in the center, but it doesn't really rise. So just whisk that egg into what you've already got there. And we've got a happy little mixture. You're still breaking up your coconut oil. If you see any big chunks, just grab it with your whisk and bang it down. And there you go. Now we're done with the whisk. Pop that in the sink. And the next thing I'm going to add is 2 cups of almond milk. You can use any kind of milk that you want, and I need that whisk back, but I'm not going to get it. Just use a spoon. And I'm just going to stir the milk into the rest of the mixture that we've created, that we've made, and try to get it all nice and incorporated. And it almost looks like chocolate milk, like you could make hot chocolate out of this. Ooh, it looks good because of the cinnamon, and the maple syrup, and then the milk, of course. And once you have that pretty well incorporated, the next thing you're going to do is add 2 cups of steel-cut oats. Not instant oats. You don't want instant oats. They really mess this recipe up. That's the one unforgivable thing about this recipe. So I have a 1/4 scoop in here, 1/4 cup scoop, so I'm just going to do this 8 times. And so here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, this recipe is so forgiving that you can go a little over or a little under, and it's not a big deal at all. So you just stir the oats into your liquid. Now at this stage, there are 2 things you can do. You can just keep right going with your recipe, add your last ingredient, and toss in the oven, or you can leave it to sit in the liquid. Leave the oats to sit in the liquid, and the oats will begin to absorb the liquid and soften a little bit. And that's really a baker's choice. So you decide which way you want to go with that. But just get them stirred in good. Make sure that everything's gotten all mixed up well in there. Okay. That looks good, and it's just a really thin batter. I mean, it is so liquidy that if I hold this the wrong way, it is just absolutely going to pour all over the counter. But see how thin that is? The liquid is just like water or milk, which is actually what it is. So, alright, now for the last ingredient, I have to get it out of the freezer. It's frozen blueberries. Now, I use frozen blueberries because you can keep them on hand in the freezer and always have them available for you. And the original recipe called for 1.5 cups. I put 2 cups in mine, and I even heat them a little bit. But you can also use other berries that are anti-inflammatory, but blueberries are extremely anti-inflammatory. And so they are wonderful for you to eat when you have inflammatory bowel disease or eczema, which is an inflammatory disease condition as well, or arthritis or whatever other kind of inflammatory issue you have. But specifically, I made this for inflammatory bowel disease. Let me put my blueberries back up. I'll be right back. Alright, now when you add your blueberries in and you stir them in, your batter's going to turn blue. I have not found a way to get around that. The more you rinse them, the more they thaw, and the more blue you get in your batter. But you want to incorporate your blueberries really well. Make sure that they're absolutely suspended throughout your batter, like so. And it's kind of a weird consistency, but don't worry about that. As I said, this recipe is so forgiving. Now, it's not going to rise in the oven like a cake or a muffin would rise. It's going to pretty much be the same level it is when you put it in the oven. It'll stay there until you take it out of the oven. There's not really a lot of rise to it, so that's good. It's just you need that baking powder and the egg to kind of make everything come together and bind. So I have an 8x8 baking dish, and I'm going to spray it with non-stick spray and pour my mixture in and put it in the oven. Alright, so I'm going to readjust my camera just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing over here without making too big of a mess. But you just glop it all in there. Nothing to it. You could make this in muffin tins if you evenly distribute your liquid. It does not really evenly distribute like a batter does. So you would have to really work hard at getting it evenly into the pan. Now, as you can see in the pan, I've got a big clump of oatmeal and blueberries sticking up. Can you see that? There you go. And so you want to use your spoon and move your oats and blueberries out to the corners where it's mostly liquid. And then just kind of pat it down. And that distributes the liquid more evenly, just giving it a pat. Kind of brings the liquid to the spots that need it and moves it away from the spots where there's too much liquid incorporated. And that's all you do. And it's not going to rise, as I said. It's just going to stay about the same level in the pan as it bakes, and you bake it for 1 hour and you are good to go. When I pull it out of the oven, I'll be back to show you the final result. Hi, we're back with our finished product. Here is our blueberry bake. Doesn't that look delicious? It really is. As you can see, the blueberries are suspended nicely throughout the entire batch. The oats are nice and soft and chewy. Fork just slides right through, and it is so delicious. The blueberries have wonderful anti-inflammatory properties. The cinnamon also makes it warm and just wonderful. That's what makes it such a good breakfast, is the cinnamon flavor. And cinnamon is high in anti-inflammatories and has lots of vitamins and minerals in it too. So I hope you enjoy this recipe. I'll leave the recipe in the description box below. Please try it your own way with your own berries. You can use raspberries, strawberries, blackberries. I like blueberries, so I use them. But make it your own and try the recipe. And I hope you enjoy it. And whatever you do, don't forget to laugh.